Alright, what's up everyone? Welcome to Amigoscode. My name is Nelson, and in this video I'm going to show you exactly how you can deploy a Spring Boot application using Amazon Elastic Beanstalk. So let's say that you have an application and you want real users to consume your application. Now, how do you do it, right? You need to know about the infrastructure. You need to know how Amazon operates. You need to know about VPCs, security groups, auto-scaling groups, and all of those shenanigans that can be a bit daunting. So what Elastic Beanstalk allows us to do is pretty much just forget about everything else, and we don't need to know the internals of how Amazon really works, and pretty much it just simplifies the entire process. So what we're going to do in this video is take this web application, and by the way, this is a full stack application written with Spring Boot and React, and basically we're going to take this application and deploy to Amazon Beanstalk. And you can see that right now this is actually running inside of Amazon Elastic Beanstalk. So right now real users can use this application. So just let me give you a bit of context. So what we have really is a React application. So right here, so this is the front end, and this is the actual backend written with Spring Boot. And everything is bundled into one single jar. And we are exposing port 5000 right here. And then we have a database up and running with Amazon RDS. And we also have configured the actual security groups so that the application side can talk to the database. And we also are using Spring profiles to create a build that is specific to this environment right here. And everything is running within Amazon Elastic Beanstalk. So go ahead and grab the source code in this repo right here. And if you actually switch to the master branch, so this is the master branch where you can download everything and follow along. So for this video, I'm going to be using IntelliJ, which is my favorite IDE. And basically I've got an entire video on how to download, install, and configure IntelliJ. And to be honest, IntelliJ is the best IDE out there without any doubt. So without further ado, let's go ahead and learn about Amazon Elastic Beanstalk. Alright, once you have an account with Amazon AWS, you should see a screen like this. So there is a lot going on in this screen, but don't worry, because you can see that they've got a lot of services, and I want to make sure that this will be as easy and straightforward for you to deploy your very first application using Elastic Beanstalk. And also you're going to instantiate a database using RDS. So as you can see in the screen right here, the first thing that I want you to do is to go ahead and pick the actual region. So Amazon has regions, and by default, when you are in an account, you have to specify a region. So depending on where you live, go ahead and choose the region which is the closest to you. So for me, it will be EU Island. So once you have that out of the way, let me actually go ahead and show you what we're going to do now. So you saw that I showed you exactly that our application will be connecting to a database, right? So before we do anything, we need to have a database, because we already have the application right here, and this is our jar file. So what we need to do now is to create a database and then have this application-demo.yaml file that will have the properties for this database. So go ahead and go back to the Amazon console and go ahead and pretty much on this search bar, search for RDS. So RDS simply stands for Relational Database Service. So go ahead and select it, and then go ahead and simply create a database. So right here, you can see that we can pick from these different database engines. So MySQL, MariaDB, Postgres, Oracle, and Microsoft SQL Server. So the database that we've been using throughout this course was Postgres. So let's go ahead and pick Postgres. And then you can see this checkbox right here. So this checkbox allows us to pretty much enable options eligible for RDS free usage tier. So when you sign up with Amazon, they give you some resources to test for free up to a year. So that's really good generosity from Amazon, because they want us to test their products without having to pay any money. So let me go ahead and pretty much just tick this box, and you can see that all of these database engines are eligible for the free tier usage, apart from Amazon Aurora. Now I'm going to go ahead and click next. And now let's go ahead and pretty much just enable this checkbox as well. So only enable options eligible for RDS free usage tier. So this makes sure that you don't pay any money, basically. So now scroll down and don't worry about this. So you can see that this is not eligible with the free tier usage. So the allocated storage, let's say before 20 gig is more than enough. Enable storage auto scaling. So this means that if you run out of storage, the storage will be able to increase. So it's always a good idea. And you can see the maximum storage threshold. So we can leave it as 1000. Now for the database identifier, let's go ahead and simply say full stack and then DB. So usually you would give a better name, but because we are learning about full stack, Spring Boot, and React, so let me actually go ahead and say full stack Spring Boot and then DB. So if you are using this in, real life or in production, you might, pick a better name. So the master username, go ahead and specify a string that allows you to log in as the master user. So for this, you can pick your user or your name. So in my case, I want to say Amigos and then code. So this will be the master username. Now let me also go ahead and pick a master password. There we go. Let me repeat that as well. And make sure that you remember these, because you will need them to connect to this database. So now go ahead and press next. And you can leave everything as default, but basically we don't want this database to be public accessible. And then availability zone, you can either go ahead and pick any of these 3 availability zones, or you might have 2 or more than 3 if you are in a different region. So I'm going to actually pick region 1A, and then you can create a new security group. And this is pretty much how you control traffic going and leaving your database. So next, go ahead and select a database name. So remember, what we've been doing is, if I open up resources and then application.yaml, you can see that we already have this database, right? Amigoscode demo. So for you, it might be different. So for me, I'm actually going to create the same database. So let me go back to Amazon and then paste that in. And the port, so remember 5432, this is the default. So if I open up IntelliJ, you can see that this is connecting to 5432. So I'm going to leave this as it is. Next, let's go ahead and scroll down. And here you can see that the backup retention period is 7 days, and I really don't care. And now I'm going to leave this as default. So this is to enable some enhanced monitoring, so you can see what is happening within your database. Also for performance, Don't worry about the logs for now. Maintenance, so simply say no preference. So this is more advanced stuff. And right here, so enable deletion protection. So this is so that you don't accidentally delete this database. And if you want to delete the database, you must uncheck this checkbox. So in my case, I know that this is for testing purposes and I want to delete it eventually. So that's it. So now what I'm going to do is simply click create database. And there we go. So you can see that the database is being created. And let's go ahead and view the database instance details. So you can see that the status is creating and we have some metrics around here. You can see that everything is empty because the database is not up and running yet. So now all we have to do is wait until the database is up and running, and then we can get some details about the database, specifically the actual URL to connect to it. And there we go. So after about 5 minutes or so, the database is available. So you can see right here. So the information is available and you can see the DB identifier. So this is the actual name that we gave it. And the CPU utilization is about 3% right now, which is pretty much nothing. And you can see the actual region. So that's the one that we chose. And basically, so right here, so endpoint. So this is what we need in order to connect to our database. And you can see the port, and we have some network information as well as some security information that we will touch in a second. And you can see that we have some monitoring, logging, configuration, maintenance, and tags. So there we go. So you successfully managed to spin up an RDS instance, which is running Postgres. Next, let's go ahead and define the actual configuration file to point to this new database. All right, so far we have our database up and running with Amazon AWS, and we also have our jar. So now let's go ahead and learn about Spring profiles. So remember, I said that we need to create this application-demo.yaml. And this file will contain information about the details of how to connect to our database. Because if you remember correctly, we have a local database, right? And this is coming from the application.yaml, but we need to have the ability to switch between databases. And that's why we have to create this application-demo.yaml. So let me go ahead and open up IntelliJ. And right here, so you can see that we have this application.yaml. So if I start the application, I want you to see something. So if I scroll up, so right here, so on the second line, you can see that it says no active profile set, failing back to default profiles and then default right here. So what is happening is that because we don't have any other configuration file, Spring Boot is picking up this application.yaml and then feeding that to our application. And remember, this is actually used inside of our data source. So right here. So what we're going to do is create a new file. So let me simply Command C, Command V, and then rename this to -demo. So application-demo.yaml. Okay. Now you can see that we have two property files. So we have the default one and we also have the demo one. Now the way that you switch between these two files is by using Spring Profiles Active property. So what we need to do is to pass a program argument when the application starts, so Spring Boot knows which configuration file to pick from. So go ahead and click on this drop down at the very top, edit configurations, And then inside of program arguments, go ahead and simply say -- spring.profiles.active. And then this will be equal to demo. And then apply. Okay. Now, if I restart the application, and if you look carefully, so right here, the following profiles are active and then demo. So this means that we've picked the correct file. And basically what it's doing is simply taking this string right here, so equals and then demo, and then finding any property file that has dash and then the actual profile. So in our case, it's demo. And to be honest, this is all you're going to need to know about Spring profiles. Next, let's go ahead and change some of the properties in this application-demo property file. All right, let's go ahead and change some of these values here. So the first one that I want to change is the actual server port. So if I go back to the actual diagram, so remember I said that we have to expose port 5000 instead of 8080 because of Elastic Beanstalk. And this should be elastic, not elastic. So we have to expose port 5000 instead of 8080. So right here, we've done 8080 because it's local, but Elastic Beanstalk needs port 5000. So to do that, let's go ahead and simply open up IntelliJ, and let's go ahead and pretty much just change the server port. So simply type server and then column, new line, port, column, and then 5000. So if I restart the server now, or actually start the server, you can see that now instead of 8080, it says 5000. So let me actually remove that so you can see exactly what we did. So if I restart, you can see that by default Spring picks port 8080, but we have to change that to 5000. So we are overriding that with server and then port 5000. So if I restart again, you can see that it is 5000 indeed. Next, let's go ahead and change the actual JDBC URL, username, and password to match the ones in our RDS instance. So open up Amazon console, or actually AWS console, and then right here, this is the actual endpoint. So Command C on that. Go back to IntelliJ. Instead of localhost, will be that. And then the port is the same, 5432. So you can see right here, 5432. Then the actual username was Amigoscode. And this might be different, whatever you picked. And then my password was 123456789. And I know it's very, very secure, right? Not really. So this is a very weak password, and you should never pick a password like this. You either pick a very strong password, like my case. Actually, I'm joking. So this is very weak. So you either pick a very strong password, or you use a different mechanism of storing passwords. So this is good enough for now. Go ahead and type the password that you've picked. But now, if I actually restart the server, I'm not expecting this to work, and I'm going to explain why in a second. So you will see that the application is actually hanging, and eventually it will time out. So you can see that it's starting and it's taking ages, and there we go. So the connection attempt failed. And basically we are trying to connect to our RDS instance, and we haven't specified any security rules in which allows inbound traffic to our database. And also, you should never connect to your Amazon databases from your laptop. like this, right? So you either deploy the application and then you let the application access your database. But this is everything you need to do in order to change application-demo.yaml to point to your RDS database. Next, let's go ahead and modify our build to also select this file when it creates the actual jar file. So let me actually go ahead and pretty much just remove this. So we don't need this anymore because our build will do that for us. So apply, and also you saw that whenever we try to connect to our database, it simply fails. Next, let's go ahead and modify our build to include this property file when it produces the jar file. Alright, so to change our build to include this property file, if selected, is very simple. So go ahead and open up your pom.xml. And right here, remember that we had two plugins. So this was the actual, this was the Maven frontend plugin. So let me go ahead and collapse that. And this was the actual copying of the resources, right? So this one right here. So copy resources. So let's actually go ahead and after the build, right? After the build, let's go ahead and define a properties. So we're going to define a properties section, and right here simply say spring dot profiles dot active, and guess what, this will be demo. Now we have to make one change, and that is to let this application-demo YAML that the actual profile will come from the pom.xml. And the way that we do it is by simply defining a new property, and this will be spring and then profile, or actually profiles, and then active, and then let's go ahead and simply say at, and then spring dot profiles dot active. So this spring, or actually should be profiles, just like that. So this spring.profiles.active is the one coming from our pom.xml inside of this properties section, and you can see that we define the actual property files active. So what I'm going to do is actually do the same for the default one. So I'm going to grab this and then paste right here. Now let's go ahead and create a build that will use application-demo.yaml properties. So to do that, let's simply go ahead and open up this Maven profiles. So we're not going to do it through the terminal this time. So right here, open up the Maven projects, and then you can see that we have profiles. Go ahead and select demo. And then right here, you can see the life cycle. Let's go ahead and simply say install. So just give it a second. And you can see that it's creating a build for us. So this is what we've seen before. There we go. The build was success. If I now scroll up, so at the very top, we should see that you can see right here, we should see demo somewhere. So if I search for demo, so if I go up, you can see that this was the command install -p and then demo. And this was the exact same thing that we did through the terminal, remember? So dash and then p. So remember, this is what we did, right? So Maven clean install -p and then demo is the exact same thing. So let's go ahead and actually test that this jar won't be able to connect to our RDS instance. So let's go ahead and pretty much just run the jar. So if I collapse this, and then go to my terminal and clear this, cd target, and then java -jar, and then demo-001 snapshot.jar, and then run that. And if I scroll up, so you can see that the following profiles are active: demo, and this should fail. And that's exactly what we want. There we go. So this failed. And if I scroll up, this was the exact same error that we had previously. And we're almost ready to take this jar and deploy to Amazon Beanstalk. Alright, so we are almost ready to take our application and deploy to Elastic Beanstalk. So we have our database, we have our application, we also have a build that contains the correct profile, and this is demo, right? So it's loading the demo, application-demo YAML that contains information on how to connect to our RDS instance. So currently it's failing to connect locally because we haven't told the database security group to allow ingress traffic from our IP. But that's fine because we don't want that, right? So now let's go ahead and actually use Amazon Elastic Beanstalk. So let's go ahead and open up the actual console. And what I'm going to do, so we don't have to do anything with databases for now. So what I'm going to do is select services, and then you can search for bean and then stalk. So Elastic Beanstalk. Open that up, and you can see that you have this welcome page if you haven't created any applications or environments before. So let's go ahead and click on Get Started. And then to create a new web app, let's go ahead and give it a name. So the name will be, so this again, right? So go ahead and pick a name according to your application. But for me, I want to say Spring and then Boot FullStack with React. So I know it's a long name, but go ahead and pick a much more meaningful name according to your application. Now, we're not going to upload our jar file just yet, but for now, let's go ahead and pretty much click on application tags. Let's go ahead and add a tag. So environment, and this will be demo. And then application underscore name. Let's go ahead and take that and paste it in. And there we go. So this is some tags so you can identify your Amazon instances that will be running within this environment. So let's go ahead now and choose platform. So you can see that they have Docker, multi-container Docker, Go, .NET, Node.js, PHP, Python, Tomcat, Go, so on and so forth. But the one that we are interested in is Java. And then instead of uploading our code, we're not going to do that now. For now, go ahead and simply generate a sample application. Go ahead and create application. And there we go. So now it's going ahead and creating everything in order for us to have a full environment with all the Amazon resources, allowing us to run our application. So just give it a second. So it's creating a bunch of stuff. But what I want to show you is if you click on services here and then go to cloud and then formation. There we go. So you can see that I've got one stack. And basically this is the stack that contains all of the resources. And you can see the actual events. So if I click on events, you can see that what this environment is doing. So you can see that it's creating a bunch of stuff, elastic IPs, launch configurations, security groups right here. So auto scaling, launch configuration as well. And then if I scroll up, you can see that a bunch of security groups. So this will finish in a second. If I refresh, you can see that it's still doing some stuff. But if I click on resources, you can see that these are all the resources that it has created. So it already created a security group, an EB instance, and you can see that this is the Elastic IP so that we can connect to our application, some metadata for Beanstalk, and it's doing some stuff. So after this is done, you'll see all the resources created, and then you'll have a full environment with a sample application up and running. So let me go back to Elastic Beanstalk. It's now green, and you can see that the health is okay and everything is up and running. So in fact, let me go to CloudFormation again. So history, CloudFormation, and you can see that create complete, right? So you can see all the events and you can see all the resources, and indeed there were only 7. So let me go back to Elastic Beanstalk and now click on my application, and you can see that everything is fine. And now you can see that I've got a URL right here. So Spring Boot FullStack with React -env, some random string, and then this is the actual region, EU West 1, elasticbeanstalk.com. So obviously for you, it might be a better name depending on the actual application name that you chose, but for me, it's this weird long name. So now let me go ahead and click on it. And there we go. You can see that we have a very basic and sample application up and running with Elastic Beanstalk. Next, let's go ahead and see what are the steps necessary for us to deploy our own application. All right, so we have this sample application running with Elastic Beanstalk, and now we can go ahead and take our application, our full stack Spring Boot application with React, and deploy to Elastic Beanstalk, and then we can serve our application to real users. So let me go back to the console, and currently I have a slight problem. So currently Elastic Beanstalk doesn't allow me to change the configuration for Java. You can see that by default, it only supports Java 8. And my application, so if I go back to IntelliJ, so this application right here, so you can see that it was written with Java 11. So by the time that you watch this video, if they have support for Java 11, you can skip this video. But if they don't, if you are using Java 11 or 12 and you need to deploy your Java Beanstalk application, then follow along. So what we need to do is to use a plugin that will compile our source code back to Java 8. So from Java 11 to Java 8. So luckily we have a plugin that allows us to do that. So let's quickly implement it. So open up pom.xml and let me collapse this properties. And right here, so after this plugin, so after the second plugin, let's go ahead and define a new plugin, and then the group ID will be org.apache.maven. and then plugins, and then the artifact ID will be maven-compiler- and then plugin, just like that. And then we have to pass some configuration. So configuration, and let's go ahead and define the source. So the source will be 1.8, and then the target, so we have to specify the target, and the target will also be .1.8. And basically what we're doing here is simply transforming our code back from Java 11 to 1.8. So now what I'm going to do is actually duplicate this entire profile. So let me put it just here above, and then I'm going to delete this, so this plugin from here, and let's go ahead and rename this to demo-compile-to Java-8. There we go. So you can see that we have two profiles, one that doesn't compile back from any source and one that does compile to Java 8. So this is so that we can use with Elastic Beanstalk, because as I speak they haven't got support for Java 9, 11 and 12. So that's why we have to do this. So now that we have these two profiles, we can go ahead and run a build that we can take and deploy to Elastic Beanstalk. So let's go ahead and create the final build to deploy to Elastic Beanstalk. So go ahead again and open up the Maven projects tab, or you can do this through the terminal. So what I'm going to do is click on profiles, and you can see that we have demo compile to Java 8. Select that one, and then simply click on lifecycle and then install. Just give it a second, and there we go. So the build was success. Again, you could run this through terminal, but I want to show you exactly how to do this through IntelliJ as well, which is possible, and it's more visually. So there we go. So now we have a jar file. So if I expand the project tab, so you can see that within target, like always, we have a jar file, and this is the final jar that will allow us to have an application deployed with Elastic Beanstalk. And that's what we're going to do next. Alright, let's go ahead and take our jar and deploy to Elastic Beanstalk. So the way that you deploy an application to Elastic Beanstalk is very simple. You see that currently we are running the sample application. So what we want to do is upload and deploy. So go ahead and click on this button right here, and then it's very straightforward. So what we need to do is simply choose a file, and the file will be the demo-001 snapshot.jar. So make sure that you navigate to your target folder and then get the jar file, open, and then you can give it a name. Let's go ahead and simply say version and then -1. And finally, all we have to do is deploy. Just give it a second. It's actually uploading. There we go. So now it's actually uploading our new version, and we should see it up and running, and we should see it up and running in about a minute or so. You can see that the environment update is starting. Just give it a second. Deploying a new version to instance. There we go. And the deployment has finished. And you can see that the health is degraded. So you can see that it changes, and this is because it's actually restarting the server and trying to start the application, but eventually it will fail. So you can see right here, degraded. Now the reason why it's degraded, so let's actually look into the logs and see why is that. So let's go ahead and click on logs right here, and then click on request logs last 100 lines. There we go. I'm going to download. And you can see right here, this is the logs. And if you look carefully, what it's complaining about is connection attempt failed. And remember, this was the actual error that we had previously when we tried to connect from our local machine to the RDS instance. But now we're also getting the same thing. So right here, you can see that the profile demo is active, but it's not getting anywhere because it's failing to connect to our database. And the reason why it's failing to connect to our database is because of this. So let me explain quickly. So currently we have our application. So it's listening on port 5000, and it has both the React application or the front end as well as the back end. And then we are connecting to our database. So with Amazon, we have a concept of security groups. So they work like this. And basically, security groups are simply a way of you protecting your instances. And then what you can do is simply allow what can access what. So you can see that both our application and database, they both have a security group, but we haven't specified any rule that allows any resource that has this security group attached to it to be able to access the security group for our database. So basically what we need is ingress traffic from the instance security group. So basically from this instance right here. Then once we have this rule, the application will work. So let's go ahead and do that now. So open up AWS console and let me go back to dashboard. So you can see that it's green, but then eventually it will become red. But what we need to do is if you go to configuration and then go to instances, click on modify. And by the way, if you don't see that, you might see something like this. So you either have a table view or a grid view. So go ahead and click on modify, scroll down, and you can see that we have some security groups. And this one right here, the one selected, is the one for the Elastic Beanstalk. So this is where all the instances are, i.e. we only have one instance running, and I'm going to show you this in a second. But then you also have the actual database. So let's go ahead and click on services and then click on EC2, or actually search for EC2. So this is the actual server. And you can see that we have one running instance. So this is what's running our application. So now let me actually go ahead and search for security groups. And you can see that we have 3 of them. So this is a default that comes with the default VPC, but the ones that we created were these 2. So this one was for the actual environment with Elastic Beanstalk, and this one is for the actual database, the first one. So this one here. So if I click on the database, you can see that the inbound rules is empty. And if I see the outbound rules, you can see that there is one. So this means that the database can talk to any other service. So let's go ahead to the inbound rule. And what we need is to say we allow traffic from anything that comes from our environment right here. So from this security group that contains the actual instance. So let's grab this security group ID, Command C, go back to the first one. So this is for the database. Go ahead and edit the inbound, and then go ahead and specify the port 5432. So that's where we are trying to connect. And then right here, you can see that we can specify the IP, CIDR, or security group. So go ahead and add the actual security group, and then simply say from Elastic Beanstalk instance. If I save this, and now let's go back to Elastic Beanstalk. And you can see that it's green, which is good news. And if I click on it, you can see that everything is fine. Next, let's go ahead and test our application, which has been successfully deployed with Elastic Beanstalk. All right, let's go ahead and see our application in action. So let me close the logs here. And remember, before we deploy this sample application. Now, so you can see that the URL is the same. So what I'm going to do is simply refresh. And there you go. You can see that we have our application up and running with Elastic Beanstalk. So to prove that this is working, let me go ahead and copy this, open Safari or any other web browser, paste that in, enter. There we go. You can see that's working. So we haven't got no one in our database. So it's now time for us to add someone. So let me go ahead and add someone. So John, and then Jones, John Jones at gmail.com, and his mail. If I go ahead and submit, and there we go. You can see that the application is working as expected. And you can see that we have the number here, and you can keep on adding students. And to be honest, so if I go back actually to Chrome, and if I refresh here, we should see John in the database. And congratulations, you have deployed your application to Amazon Elastic Beanstalk, which means that you can share this application with real users. Not quite yet, because there is a lot to be done to this application, but you get the point. So you could have different environments. So this environment that we created, so this one here, so this is for testing, right? So we are testing our application, and then once the application is fully ready, we can create a brand new environment, right? Or a brand new application, and then we can deploy that to real users. And with Elastic Beanstalk, it means that you can deploy code without having to have fully knowledge of what is going on behind the scenes with all of the services provided by Amazon AWS. All right, so I've gone ahead and made some changes to our front end. So I've added the ability for us to edit students and also the ability to delete students. So don't worry about these changes, because this will be part of the big exercise that is coming. But for now, what I want to show you is how to deploy a subsequent version to Elastic Beanstalk. So you can see that this app is running locally, so localhost port 3000, and this is the actual real application running live, right? So this is our application that we deployed previously. So if I refresh, you can see that we only have John Jones, and you can see that I haven't got the changes. So I can't really edit his information, and I can't even delete John Jones. So let's go ahead and take this version, which is running locally, and deploy to Elastic Beanstalk. So what I'm going to do is simply open up terminal. And right now I'm inside of the root folder. Now let me go ahead and generate a build that will contain our new changes. So mvn clean install -p demo. And then remember that we have two builds, right? So if I go back to IntelliJ, you can see that we have demo and then demo compiled to Java 8. And this is because Elastic Beanstalk does not support Java 11 as I speak. So right here, you can see that I'm running Java 11. But because Elastic Beanstalk doesn't support it, I need to compile down to Java 8. So let me go back to my terminal and simply say dash and then compile -2 -java -8. Now if I press enter, and I could actually do this through this interface, but I just want to show you different ways of doing it. So let's wait now for this to complete. Just give it a second. It's running the tests. And there we go. So you can see that the build was success. Now, all we have to do is, if I clear the screen first, cd into target, and then LA or ls -al, you can see that we have this jar. And this jar contains our new changes. So let's go ahead and deploy it. Now, let me go ahead and go back to Elastic Beanstalk. Inside of our main dashboard, you can see that we are running version -1. Now, let's go ahead and simply click upload and deploy. So you can see that the version label was pre-populated to version -2, which is fine. And then choose file and go ahead and navigate to the target folder and simply select the demo and then the actual jar. So whatever the name of your jar is, pretty much just open and then deploy. So right now it's actually uploading the jar file. Just give it a second. And by the way, my internet is really slow, so just bear with me. And there we go. Now you can see that the update, so you can see that it's deploying a new version to instance. So we just have to wait a few seconds. And there we go. You can see that the health is green, which means that everything is fine. So let's go back to our application, which is deployed. And remember previously, so this is the actual old version. Now, if I refresh my web browser, you can see that now I'm getting the actual new changes, which is awesome. So let's go ahead and pretty much just edit John Jones to John and then Cook. And let's also update the actual email and then submit. And you can also see that now I've got this notification right here and it says that everything was fine. And you can see that we do get the new information right here. So John Cook. Now let's go ahead and add a new person to our application. So I've just added Maria, submit, and I can see that we are missing a notification. So we have to fix that on the next version. Let's add someone else. And I've gone ahead and added Alexa Echo. So let's go ahead and submit. And there we go. So now you can see that we have 3 people in our system. And let's say that we want to delete Alexa Echo. So simply click on delete. And you can see that I've got this pop over. Are you sure you want to delete? And then this is the actual ID of Alexa. And then simply say yes. And you can see that we have a notification and Alexa is now gone. And this is how you deploy new versions to Amazon Elastic Beanstalk. And finally, let me go ahead and show you how to deploy a previous version. So let me go back to Elastic Beanstalk. And what I want to do is simply deploy the version that we had before without having the ability to edit and delete, right? So let's say that we found out a bug with these 2 functionalities and we simply want to go back to the previous version so that users can still use our application. So the way we do it with Elastic Beanstalk is simply by going back to the main dashboard, Now you can see that right here we have all applications, and if I click on my application, you can see that I've got application versions right here, and currently you can see that we have 3 versions, or actually 2 versions, right? So we started with a sample application, and then we deployed version 1, and then we deployed version 2. So currently the version running is version 2, and you can see right here, right? So it's deployed to our environment. So let's go ahead and deploy the previous version. So simply go ahead and click on version 1, and then actions, and then simply deploy, and then deploy, and you can see that the deployment started. If I go to all applications and then click on my application, and we have version 1 right here, which is running. So let's go ahead and go to our tab, and previously we were running the version 2. Now if I refresh, those 2 buttons are gone, and now we are running the previous version. And this is pretty much how you deploy Spring Boot applications to Elastic Beanstalk. If you have any questions, go ahead and comment down below. Otherwise, make sure to subscribe to my channel to get more videos like this. Follow me on my Instagram. Also join the private Facebook group where you can ask questions and be up to date with all my videos and courses. This is all for now. I hope you had fun, and I'll see you on the next one. See ya.